with her statement, we invite you to ask our panelists questions. There's a mic in the center of the room. And Laura, let's talk about your case. Obviously, this happened before this whole mayoral thing happened with Mr. Filner. It happened in 2005, correct?
That's correct.
You were working on his campaign. You felt you were inappropriately touched by him, harassed, did not get the apology you were seeking, but did not go public because of his position at the time, thinking that that would be extremely detrimental to you and your business.
Well, I wasn't a business at the time, it was my job. So, we're all faced with that choice of, do I continue to keep a roof over my head, or how do I negotiate this? So
right.
It was a
So then 2013 happens, and you become one of the people who comes forth and says, yep, it happened to me too. Tell me what the reaction that you got from the media, especially since it had occurred 7 or 8 years before.
My situation, it's a very sensational one, and I'm sure that you all as professionals are used to dealing with these stories that have a certain grisly appeal, and I think that the Filner saga was certainly one of those. I was as prepared as I could be before I decided to come forward. I'm lucky because I have friends that have worked in communications that I could contact as resources, and I had some experience professionally myself. So I feel like I was in a better position than most folks that might have been in my shoes. And but that said, even with all of that preparation, I was certainly not prepared for the media frenzy outside my house. I wasn't prepared to have to go and stay somewhere else that night. I wasn't prepared for the challenges of, I was prepared to be questioned, but I think, and it really was varied, because I think that, the coverage was in some ways incredibly fair, but it varied journalist to journalist and piece to piece, and it was a very long arc of a story, so it was over several months. So I would say that there were some bright spots and there were some challenges. One of the things that I found challenging, and you see this with other folks, but until you experience it yourself, when it's particularly around something where you're a little worried about how you're presenting yourself and what's going to happen on the back end of your completing your story. And some of that is some of the things we're talking about with respect to things being characterized in one way or the other. And I think that happened to me particularly with some of the TV stories. And I would speak to a reporter, and it was important to me to try to be thoughtful as I gave my answers, and it was important to me to try, when at all possible, to be composed. And there were stories where I was described as being outraged, and there were sort of summaries that were presented that I didn't feel reflected either my demeanor or statements in the interview. And so there were those moments, but I do have to say I don't want this to be entirely critical, because there were a lot of moments and a lot of stories that I followed that I felt were very fair, both to me and to try to put it into context. It's challenging to come forward and be doubted, and to know that you're going to be doubted, and to know that that's part of the process, and particularly as having to recount these things that happened to you that were humiliating, that you don't want to be known for. So that's just, I don't know if that's an inherent challenge, but I'd say my advice would be to be mindful of that. And I did want to point out one other thing with respect to the journalist's treatment of me. It was interesting because I do think there's a gender divide. When I had women reporters covering me, they asked similar questions as the male reporters, but the manner in which they asked them did not put me on the defensive in the same way.